Welcome back, Doug Pagitt Radio on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and over at DougPagittRadio.com. For those just tuning in, because you tune in at 12:30, this is our final AM 950 episode. Doug Pagitt Radio is going to be available again in June in other formats, but not here on Sunday afternoons on AM 950. And we have so appreciated the goodness of the people here at the radio station in our conversations that we've been able to have. We call it religious radio. That's not quite right. Trying to inspire broader religious conversation in our culture and our society in some positive ways. And we've tended to have different regular contributors. And sometimes we get our wires crossed. And I thought Carla was going to be on the last segment, and now she's called in now. Hey, Carla.
Hi. It wasn't a wire cross. It's a rainstorm on the interstate.
Okay. All right. Well, I thought that was probably it. That somehow you were in between telephone accessibility because of your voyaging up to the North Dakota region. To
the plains
over the weekend.
No, it's raining like a son of a gun out here in the flatlands, and so I needed to get where I could, see.
Yes.
Before I decided to call and drive, I thought I should see. So
I think that's excellent. Well, Carla Barnhill has been our parenting guru and our advice giver here for the 2.5 years on the radio program. Hey, Carla, thanks for all of your work here on the radio show.
Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure. I was thinking about how long we've been up to this, and we go back to 2008. Is that when you started doing the?
Yeah, we started. We had a program on this station 2009, but we ran it for about a year previous to that, and on a Blog Talk Radio platform. Yeah. And so I mean, it's been.
I used to get like a half an hour back then. Remember those days?
Yeah, I know. And then we whittled you down to 9 minutes, and then you called in for into a 13-minute segment. Yeah, because it's the changing formats.
It is. And you know what? That's what's the beauty of the whole thing, is that we've been able to flex around and make it work every time.
Well, Carla, I appreciate so much your advice. Any advice for us here in our final installment? Are you prepared to give us advice today, or do you simply want to reflect on the glory that has been these 3.5 years?
Well, I was going to do a little bit of both, actually.
I like it.
I was going to send you off with some parting thoughts, but I thought we could do a little remissing.
Yes.
Some of the high points. Yeah.
And there have been some high points.
I think so.
I mean, every Sunday at the 12:20 or 12:33 has been a highlight.
Always a high point.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was kind of thinking about some of my favorites, where I felt like, boy, that really we really got to something there. And I think one of my favorites was when we talked about getting out of a rut.
Yes.
Remember that one?
I do.
I don't remember what I said about it, but it was a good one.
It was powerful. I think it was quit as soon as you can. Something like that.
Was that what it was?
No, I don't remember.
Fish and cut bait. Yeah. No, but we talked about kind of like acknowledging when you're stuck.
Yes.
And then kind of one step at a time moving forward. That good one day at a time works for just about everything, I think.
Yeah. Well, and it is hard because like we had to make that decision in the last couple of weeks about this radio program. What's the best format moving forward with the opportunities that are now in front of us and the the chances that we have to carry this conversation into other formats, and that new thing leaves behind an old thing, and that's hard.
That's always a little bit. It's always a little bittersweet to move to a new thing. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people avoid changing jobs or changing situations or changing relationships, is that they fear that the bitter will outweigh the sweet.
Oh,
nice. What's that saying? The devil that you know is better than the devil you don't know. And so even if things aren't great in the situation you're in, a lot of times we hesitate to move out of that because at least we know what we're in.
Right. This is the dark chocolate.
You never quite know what's coming. But that kind of just one of those a little bit of the wisdom I am gaining with age is that I find that jumping into those other things usually ends up being at least more interesting. If nothing else, it's usually more interesting to make that step forward. It might be, it might be harder, it might be scarier, it might be, not what I hoped it would be, but it's almost always more interesting. It makes for good stories.
It does. It's it's part of life too, right? And there's sometimes where that part of life, those changes that happen, just come into clearer focus, and they're distilled, right? Because we're always living through these kinds of changes, right? I mean, our bodies change, our relationships change, our situation in the world that we live in change. Like change is a constancy, and
yet,
sometimes
isn't it funny that we resist it? Like we tend to live as though that's the odd part. Like, oh no, something's changing. Instead of recognizing that kind of stability is really the odd thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's funny. I'm coming back from Moorhead because I spent the weekend with my theater friends from my college days. The guy who ran the theater for 40 years is retiring this year, so they had a big send-off for him. So I was with my theater friends all weekend, which is a whole other deal.
So you were singing some show tunes?
And theater people are kind of an odd bunch of people. You know, a lot of these folks are professional theater people in one way or another. They work on stage or behind stage, or they run companies and things like that. So, you know, they're artists, right? And we all kind of talked about how many failures we have in that realm.
Yeah.
That you have in that, you know, when you're in the arts and the performing arts, of whatever they're, visual art, you have a lot more failure than success in those fields.
Yeah, we were even talking in the previous segment that failure is necessary in a lot of art and a lot of life. I mean, that's expected.
And yet I don't have the stomach for it. You know, it's really hard, and it's hard to get yourself to go to an audition when you think the odds are not in my favor here. I'm probably, you know, I'm going to go give it all I've got, and I might not get the job. Like, nothing might come of it. I might just face rejection. But we all know 20 years after college, or 20-some years after college. But we all kind of recognize that those failures have been meaningful, and they've led to other things, and they've been hard to take, but they tend to lead you toward new places and new discoveries and new ideas. And this is going to sound super sappy, but your art actually gets better when you fail a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, we were talking about that in the previous segment, that kind of failure is not something that sometimes isn't even redeemable in and of itself. You just have to be born anew in light of it. It doesn't have to control you and win the game. It's not it doesn't get the last word, but it's also sometimes it's just real. You know, it's just. Well, I know I remember one of our, and this might have been in our rut conversation too that we had, but we talked about changing the tape that's playing in your head. Nice,
which is a little bit of, it's becoming an anachronistic thing to say.
Right.
That you have to change the tape. The what now?
Yeah, the what?
What kind of tape
I was going to say.
About?
Yeah.
I don't understand. Put it on shuffle. See what comes up.
Yeah, I
would
say
but
we all
have these tapes that we play in our head, the messages that we kind of think are true about our lives, and those are the things that play in our head. And it's possible to pop one out and put in a new one. And that takes a little bit of effort and a little bit of self-discipline to remind yourself what's true and what's real and what's not, and to make decisions to listen to a different set of voices than you maybe have been. But that's kind of how you move forward in life. And it's never easy, but if you surround yourself with people who encourage you and who are willing to let you reinvent yourself now and again, I think you find your life is a little more interesting.
I think you're right, and we've experienced that here in the last number of days of letting people in on the changes to Doug Badger Radio on AM 950, Progressive Voice of Minnesota, and DougBadgerRadio.com, as dropping the AM 950 part that we've had to say goodbye to people, and this is going to be our last one. And there's an emotion in all that, right? Like, even though there's this positive thing that's coming, these emotions, you have to do something with them, and you live this conflicted world, right? And we all do that in so many ways. Children that grow up and move on, or marriages that won't look the same in the future as they did in the past, or friendships that have started to wind down, or jobs that are being completed, or new jobs that are being taken on. And it's always this mixture in life. And, there's this desire of some of us to want to distill those out into separate little categories and speak about things only in one set of terms or another. But it's always mixed together, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and I remember this happened to me a few years ago, but, like, I was kind of, I'm a writer, right? So I always have this sort of sense of the story of my life that's taking place. And, I always think it should have this very, like, clear narrative arc. And it doesn't. And I kind of had to come to grips with that a few years ago. Like, my story isn't going from point A to point B to point C.
Nice.
It's, and I think a lot of us, like, and again, kind of artistic people, we kind of imagine this grand story that we're living out, and we think, it has this beginning, middle, and end, and it should go like this, and instead it doubles back around sometimes, or it just stops for a little while, or it takes off on a tangent that we think that's not where it was going to go at all. And so, I think we feel this kind of grief almost that this story isn't playing out the way we thought it might, or the way that it should, or the way everybody else's is, or whatever. And so I think that's another one of those things where you kind of have to come to terms with the fact that, the story that you're living is the story. That's the one.
That's right.
There's not some other story you're supposed to be living that you're not doing right.
Right.
This is the one. One that you have.
This is your life. And in
the one you're going to tell.
And even though we're connected to other people and nobody goes it alone, our own experience with our lives really is unique to us, right? Nobody else can really get it the way that we do. So we're going to live our own experience. And you notice this like in a moment of grief or sadness that somebody might have, where your empathy extends to that person for some period of time, and then you're done with it, and they still have to live in it.
Yeah.
Right. And so we realize, yes, people join us in our changes and our sadness, but in a lot of ways we have our own unique experience with that, and we should be the more mature we become, perhaps the better we are at coming to grips with that.
I think so, and I think being willing to accept that the bumps and the tangents and the sideways paths are part of it. Mm-hmm. The good and the bad, and not even I don't even know that you learn from all that. Like you said, some of it helps you reshape yourself a little bit, but some of it just hurts or just stinks or whatever. And it's like, well, that's just part of your story too. That there were ugly, undefined, unredeemed moments too.
Well, that's Carla Barnhill, and over the next number of weeks, before there is a recapitulating of the Doug Pagitt Radio conversation in other formats. If you try to find Carla Barnhill, you can find her on Facebook under Carla Barnhill. If you're looking for some advice in between radio outlets, you can always find Carla. So, Carla, any last advice to people as they as their last experience with Carla Barnhill's advice on the Doug Pagitt Radio Show on AM 950?
Here's the last bit of sort of overarching, always applies advice. You know what the right thing to do is. When you're stuck in a situation, pay attention to your gut, because you know what you need to do. You just need to go do it. I really believe most of us we know what the right choice is. Do the next right thing, and you'll find yourself moving down the good path. That's fantastic. That is Carla Barnhill. Carla, thanks for everything. Thanks for your thanks for your voice. You. And I hope you make it home safe from central Minnesota, wherever you find yourself. Hey, stick with us here on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, and DougPagittRadio.com. We have our Cripes Come On, You Got to Be Kidding Me segment, where we're going to tell you what that's been about for all these 2.5 years. Stick with us here. We'll be back after the break.